So it's easy to Google beginner marathon training plan and have a plethora of options at your fingertips. Unfortunately, these aren't always built on sound principles. You don't necessarily have any idea the background of the person who wrote the plan. And even sometimes when they are awesome plans, they don't necessarily come with the best explanation. So I wanted to take the time to come up with a beginner marathon training plan. I put a lot of time into creating this with the best practices that I know that work for runners at the beginner level. I make it very clear on when you should be starting this plan and if you're ready. It safely builds mileage. It includes the most important running types specifically geared towards beginners and provides explanations of the purpose of each run and how to execute them. Hi guys, I'm Jane, an RRCA certified running coach. I've run 8 marathons. I'm currently training for my first Boston Marathon coming up this April, and I've been a runner for over 20 years. So just a reminder, this is a beginner marathon training plan, and beginner just really means someone running their first marathon. So it really has nothing to do with speed. Just if this is your first marathon, then you would be considered a beginner marathoner. However, there are people who are very experienced with racing shorter distances. Maybe they've run a handful of 10Ks and half marathons. They're very used to doing speed work, in which case you might want to look outside to a different plan that perhaps includes some speed work, because this one doesn't. Most people who are training for their first marathon or a beginner marathoner should not have speed work in their plan anyway, and really just need to focus on building mileage. And that's because you only want to change one variable at a time in most cases. So if you are not someone who's in the market right now for a beginner marathon training plan, I will soon have some other plans available, beginner plans with speed work, intermediate plans. So definitely be on the lookout for those. But if you are a beginner marathoner, this is going to be your first one. This plan is going to be excellent for you. So let's go ahead and dive into all the logistics of the plan, what it looks like, and what you can expect. All right, guys, I'm just gonna go ahead and start with the most important things to note about this plan that are really, really important for you to understand right away. And make sure you're sticking around to the end, because I'm going to tell you where you can download this plan for free, as well as I have a little bit of a bonus to share with you as well. All right, so the most important things to know about this plan are that it is an 18-week training plan. This was a very calculated decision to make this plan 18 weeks. So I really don't believe that any beginner should be doing anything less than 18 weeks. And I feel like with the starting point of where it's at, talking a little bit about base training and where to come in, 18 weeks is perfect. As long as you're coming in with about an 18 to 20 mile per week base. So that means you should be comfortable running 18 to 20 miles before you start this 18-week training plan. That means it shouldn't be an increase of more than 10% of what you've done prior. And if you've had a few weeks of running 18 to 20 miles a week, that's going to set you up for success that much better. The plan is 5 days a week. So though you can train for a marathon on less, 4 can work for some people if they're including some cross training. But for most people, I think as a beginner, 5 days a week is the sweet spot. It's going to work well for most runners. All right, and then in looking at the plan, you're going to see that the mileage builds, and it rarely builds more than 10% each week. So having a 10% build per week is usually a good rule of thumb in order to keep your body healthy. I think there maybe is 1 or 2 weeks in here that are maybe closer to about 15%, but those are the only times. And I've included cutback weeks to make sure that your body is staying healthy before you have those tougher weeks implemented. So what I mean by a cutback week is that you have less mileage that week than you had in the weeks prior. So any good training plan should have recovery or cutback weeks. So what you're going to do in this plan is build your mileage by 3 weeks, and then the mileage will lessen, and that's your cutback week. So the reason that you want to have cutback weeks is because it's giving you that recovery period that you need, and your body is reaping all the benefits of all of the hard work that you put in the few weeks prior. So fun fact, you actually are getting stronger and faster when you are recovering, when you are sleeping, when you are taking in good nutrition. It's not actually happening in the moment per se of when you are doing the work. And that's why the recovery is so important. The last two things that are important to note, it is based around easy running. So any really good beginner marathon training plan takes into the account that a beginner probably doesn't have much experience doing speed work. And even if they do, they probably don't have the kind of experience with the amount of mileage that's going to be needed for marathon training. So in order to keep your body healthy, you shouldn't be implementing speed work at the same time you are really upping the miles in a way that you've never done before. That's why we want to focus on easy mileage overall. That is what you're going to see in this plan, besides one little tweak that I have for some speed, which you're going to enjoy. So we'll talk about that as well. And it's essentially 4 easy efforts and 1 hard effort. Now, the hard effort is still an easy pace, which if you're not really comfortable with easy pace, I have a full video about that. You definitely want to check that out because that's one of the hardest things for people to really grasp. And even on that long run though, it's going to be easy pace, but it's considered a hard effort because the miles put a lot of extra stress on your body. And it's because it's the longest run of your week, you're going to make sure you need some extra recovery around that you're making sure that you're doing dynamic stretching before, stretching after, foam rolling. I have videos on all of those things, so I will link those in case you're interested in checking those out. But those are the principles that this training plan is based around. Like I said, a lot of time was put into this, and taking all of the knowledge that I have from becoming a coach, becoming RRCA certified is all included in what you'll see in this plan. All right, so let's go ahead and take a deeper look into this plan. Now you're gonna see at the top, it says Ready, Set, Marathon. That's because that is my website, readysetmarathon.com. I have lots of articles on there about running if you're interested in checking that out. 18 to 20 miles per week of running you should be comfortable doing before you begin this plan. And you can see at the first week, you're starting with a 20-mile week, right? And we're going to increase, and then we have our cutback weeks. And as we go along, ultimately, the longest week you're going to have is 45 miles. So you won't be doing any more than that. 45 miles in my mind and from my experience is just a really good sweet spot in terms of getting the mileage you need without overdoing it. Because this is your first marathon training block that you're doing, you don't really need to do any more than that. I do see people do something below 40 at times, 35, and I just don't feel like that's enough to get you to your potential at that first marathon. Now, you hear a lot of people say that your goal should be to just finish the marathon. You just want to get to the finish line with your first marathon. But I think that most people want a little bit more from that. They do want to see a little bit of their potential at that time. Of course, as you keep going along and running more marathons and racing, you're only going to improve and get better. But this just sets you up for the best success possible without hitting that wall and having a really good experience in your marathon and not just making it to the finish line. Because my goal is to have you continue being a runner and continue your love for running. And I don't want you to end up like I did in my 20s, hating marathons, hating the whole thing, and just quitting for many years until I finally came back to it, did it the right way, and found a joy and love for running. So I think this sets you up to have a great experience overall. All right, so looking at the different types of runs that you're going to be doing. Now, this I have starting your week on Monday. The nice thing about having it for you in an Excel document is you can make a copy and then retitle it for yourself. And once you make a copy of an Excel spreadsheet, you can then manipulate it however you want. So if you want your week to start on Sunday, that's easy enough to do that. If we pop over to the long run on Sunday, that is essentially your hard effort, and that's why you need to make sure that you are having a recovery run the next day. So let's go ahead and talk about the long run and then the recovery run. So I have explanations down here in writing, as well as I've provided a video link to a YouTube video that I've made about each of these types of runs so that you have the information that you need. So let's go ahead and look first at the long run. I'm not going to read this entire explanation, but just know that the detailed explanation is there. But your long runs are all going to be done at an easy pace, every single one. That means it is conversational. And if you do need to include walk breaks within these long runs to get through it, that is completely acceptable and fine. I will caution you, you don't want to, let's say you have a 15-mile run, you don't want to only get to 12 and then feel like you absolutely can't run any further and then walk the last 3. It's much better to end up having walk breaks within so that you can do a run walk the entire time. So if you do end up in a situation where you don't think you can, where you can't do the entire mileage running, then on the next week you want to implement some sort of run walk to make sure that you can get through it. And that just means that you are walking before your heart rate is getting way too high. So like I said, those long runs are a hard effort. And so the next day it's going to be followed up with a recovery run. So recovery runs are your slowest runs of the week. They are extra easy. So if you are even close to thinking that it's not conversational, then you need to slow down. If you're questioning at all if it's easy, you need to slow down. Recovery runs are giving you the recovery that you need to reap the benefits of the long run and all of the hard effort that you put in within that. So again, if you have to do walking breaks within your recovery runs, those are totally fine. Recovery is really just a time to make sure that your legs are moving and getting those miles on your feet. So absolutely, if you can run it, you should be running it, but taking walk breaks is completely acceptable because again, you don't want to be doing too much. You may find that in the earlier weeks, you need to include some walk breaks, and then later on, as you get more comfortable, you're able to completely run them at an easy, comfortable pace. So the next thing that you're going to see within the schedule is an easy run. And so you have 2 easy runs listed on here. So they are listed here on Wednesday and Saturday. And so for the easy runs, these are done at a conversational pace. A detailed explanation is here of how it should look. I linked the video on there as well so that you have those resources at your fingertips. So just remember, easy pace is conversational. It's about a 4 on a rate of perceived exertion 1 to 10 scale. And just check in with your body. It should feel like it's easy. And if it's not, again, you can include walk breaks. This is a beginner marathon training plan. So the expectation is not that you necessarily need to run every single mile, and don't beat yourself up if you are finding yourself taking those walk breaks. Just make sure you're taking them, scattered within as opposed to all at the end. And then lastly, the type of run that you're going to see that is that speed are strides. So I have another video all about strides. I have linked that video here, given an explanation, but strides are essentially just these little bursts of speed that you are going to be doing at the end of your easy run. So you will run your easy run. If you stick to this schedule on the Wednesday, you'll run that mileage. You'll completely stop. You can just take a few minutes to take a breather if you want, and then you will do your strides. And so essentially they are 30-second bursts of speed where you are accelerating, then you get to about 85 to 90% of top speed. It's not completely all out. You don't want to overdo it. And then you decelerate or slow down. And once you get to the end, then you turn around and you walk back. So strides are for runners of every single level, from beginner to experienced, and they are just a great way to get that leg turnover going a little bit faster, implement some speed into your training, and tap into those fast twitch muscle fibers. And so these are just really fun to do when you have to do easy running all week long. It's definitely something to look forward to. And don't skip them. They may not seem important the first week, and they may not seem important after a few weeks, but after several weeks of doing them, you are going to start noticing the difference, and I promise you it will make a difference in your training and in your race overall. So a little bit of a note on strength training and cross training, because I always get questions about that. So if you are currently doing cross training, you can absolutely include it. You're obviously going to have to change things around a bit if you're doing a lot of extra cross training, because you're just not going to have all the time in the world, because you're going to be doing a lot more running. My one thing to say is that if you are continuing your cross training, you really want to keep that in an aerobic zone. So whether it's cycling or swimming, just making sure you're keeping it in that aerobic zone, and that will be super beneficial for you without overdoing it. It's not really a time to implement any new cross training. If you're not doing any other cross training, you're going to be completely fine. I've had plenty of marathon training cycles where I haven't really done cross training besides walking, and they have been successful. Now, strength training is a little bit different and something really, really important. However, it's not really a great time to be putting in brand new strength training programs, except for maybe some body weight exercises. So I did make sure to link those. If you're already doing strength training, you should absolutely include the strength training that you've been doing. Props to you for doing that, because it's only going to make you a stronger runner and make sure that you are not getting hurt. So if you aren't ready yet to start the marathon training plan, I would encourage you during this kind of pre-phase to start a strength training program and just to focus on getting stronger so that your body is super strong when you start adding in all those miles. There's a health disclaimer there at the bottom. Go ahead and make sure you read that before you start the plan because it's super important to be healthy before you start doing any exercise program. All right, so now for the most important part, where to access this plan. So if you guys look in the description below, I have a link for you. So go ahead and click on that and provide your email and it will come straight to your inbox, ready to go. That's all you guys need to do. As a bonus, you're going to find a beginner-based training plan as well within that. And so if you're someone who's feeling like you're just not going to be comfortable starting this yet at 20 miles per week, or perhaps you have your marathon way planned out in advance, which kudos to you for doing that and already being on the ball and going ahead and planning. There is a base plan in there for you to get you prepared to actually start day one of the marathon training plan. So it also gives you information within that on what to do if you need to repeat a week, if you're just feeling like not comfortable at the mileage that's there just yet, that you can repeat a week. It's 10 weeks, but it can be really as many weeks as you need in order to build that base that you need to start at that starting week one of the beginner marathon training plan with 20 miles per week. All right, guys, if you have any questions, as always, drop them below. I know there might be questions as you're doing this marathon training plan, so let me know. I'm always happy to answer them. I can't wait to hear how this plan goes for some of you. So if you are using it, drop me a line so that we can check in. Thanks for joining me, guys, and I will catch you in the next video.